Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Maheti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Last week we had just begun discussing the idea of Yajña as it is found in the Gita. So let's read verse number 9. Yajñarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. The world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of Yajña. Do thou therefore, a son of Kunti, perform action for Yajña alone, devoid of attachment. So speaking about Yajña, just to briefly summarize what we saw last time. By and large, the self, that is who I am, me as a person, generally tends to play a central role in our lives. And that is because everything in the world around affects us or is meaningful to us only to the extent it affects the self. In some way, either we like it, we don't like it, either we are hurt by it or we are pleased by it, but it has to do something with the self in order for me to react to it. There are now those who are studying the extent of the universe, what's happening in distant galaxies. Huge things are happening. Stars are being born and they're dying, and lots of things are happening. Most of us don't even know about it. And myself is not in any way affected by it. And so all these big things happening somewhere in distant galaxies, unless you have an academic interest in what's happening there, otherwise people are just fine without it. But something little might happen on the street outside my home, and because that might impact me what's happening, and I'm affected by it. So things that happen in the universe, only to the extent it affects me in some way, become meaningful to me. And therefore this self seems to be at the center of our existence, of our life, of all our experiences. The idea of Yajña is a kind of a counterpoint to that way of living. Now, Yajña is really a kind of a cosmic machine. It's a world machine, if you like. And we see how this thing works. Mostly it's in a kind of a circular fashion, which is why the seasons keep on coming round. Then there is winter followed by spring, then there is summer, then there is fall, winter again. And the water from the ocean, the rivers, evaporates, condenses, falls down in rain again, and once again it evaporates, goes. So everything, all these things keep on going round and round. Similarly, even for us, we receive so much from the world, right? Of course, from nature we receive air, water, food, without which we wouldn't even survive. But not just air, water, and food. From the people around us, we receive love, friendship, understanding, help. So whatever each one of us is today, however much we might like to think of ourselves as, I'm a self-made person, I did everything on my own, the reality is that nothing is done on our own. The entire existence is one of interdependence. And so we have received a lot from the world, because of which I have grown, I have evolved, I am who I am. And through me, I am passing on these things to others, consciously or unconsciously. So this way of thinking shows that I am not the center of the universe. This is a big world machine, and I'm just small one little part in that world machine, maybe somewhere in the corner, not even in the center. Now, a part of a larger machine cannot control the machine, and that's why we cannot control these cosmic processes. But every part in a big machine is playing some role, is doing whatever little task it is doing. If it stops doing that, or if it doesn't do that well, the machine is affected in some way. So keep that image at the back of your mind when you think of this yajna. And what this verse says is that world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of yajna. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform actions for yajna alone, devoid of attachment. Now, yajna here, in some of these very ancient commentaries, they say it primarily means what gets called a nitya karma, the things that we are supposed to do, our duties and responsibilities. And that's a good way to think. And oftentimes they speak about the 5 kinds of yajnas everyone was expected to do. And there are names for it in Sanskrit. The first one is called Deva Yajna, a sacrifice done to these celestial beings, to the divine. And that today, in today's way of understanding, we could think in terms of puja, of worship. If worship has some place in our daily lives, then doing that worship, making that kind of a offering to the divine, is part of that one kind of yajna called Deva Yajna. The next is called Brahma Yajna. And Brahma Yajna means it's a sacrifice or offering we do to these sages. Now what kind of offering would that be? That offering is through study. Just like, suppose you go to school and college and your professor asks you to study something. And now and then you take gifts and give to the professor. The professor might be happy, but what would make professor most happy if you study? So if you don't study, you just keep on giving gifts. The professor says, I don't need your gifts. I want you to study. So similarly, the offerings we make to these Vedic sages, these great ones who have brought this wisdom to us, is not just to worship them and adore them and sing songs to them, but actually study. And so studying of these scriptures is a part of called Brahma Yajna. The third is considered, it's called the Pitru Yajna. Pitru means the ancestors, the departed elders of the family. Now there is this ritual among many Hindus, the annual, observing the death anniversaries of the people in the family. And in Sanskrit, they often call it Shraddha. It's a ritual by which certain puja is done and offerings are made to the departed spirit. And it is believed that the subtle part of that offering, when offering is something that we can see, and the question can sometimes come, well, these departed spirits have gone in some very subtler worlds. How can they get these offerings that I make here? How can these reach them? And what these puja mantras say is that the subtle part of that offering that we make, that reaches there. And Agni, fire, is often considered a kind of the FedEx, of the Vedic FedEx, if you like. So, so that's why most of the offerings in the Vedic period were done in fire. So you say, Indraya Swaha, Varunaya Swaha, I'm offering this to Indra. So it is the fire then who will take that essence of that and then deliver it to Indra. And so Pitri Yajña means making these offerings to the departed spirits. Now, offerings can be, of course, done ritually, but more important than that is asking really the question, why should we even remember the departed spirits? And the reason for that is it's a way of expressing gratitude. Our own physical being has become possible because we had our parents and grandparents and great grandparents. So we owe even our physical existence to them, but not just physical existence. There's so much we have received, so much we have inherited, not simply through the physical characteristics that different families might have, but also through knowledge, through understanding, through love, through care. A lot of these things are passed on from one generation to the next. And so it's a recognition of being part of a family lineage, being grateful for all the care and blessings one has received from one's elders in the family, that this Pitri Yajña is done. Next is considered a Nru Yajña. Nru means human beings. So the act of service, anyone who needs help around us, and if it's possible for me to help them, then I should. So being a support to people around us, those in our family, among our friend circle, with your workplace, helping whoever needs assistance, that is the part, that is also a yajna. It's called Nri Yajña. And finally, it's called Bhuta Yajña. Bhuta means all animals. You can see how broad the Vedic vision was. No one is left out, right from the subtler planes of existence to the ones right up where we can see, including the animals and plants. So even not being cruel to animals, taking care of them, and so on. So one way of practicing yajna is to find a place in our life for all of these 5 things. And the broader picture, as I said, is to recognize that we are a part of this big cosmic machine. Things are continually going in us and from us through the work that we do, through the relationships that we have, we are passing on these things to others. So long as this flow is uninterrupted, the machine works well. And that's what these following verses will point out. Look at verse 10. And when it says, perform action yajna alone, devoid of attachment, in verse 9, it is this attachment that's the primary reason why my function in that machine may be affected. That if I get attached, if I don't do the kind of work that I'm supposed to do, the world machine get affected in some way. So look at verse 10. Sahayajña praja srishtva purovacha prajapatihi anena prasavishyadhvam eshavostvishta kamadhuk. The Prajapati, having in the beginning created mankind together with Yajña, said, by this shall ye multiply, this shall be the milch cow of your desires. So Prajapati is often considered that aspect, that original divine source from which this whole creation has come. And so here is this way of expressing it in ancient texts, that when Brahma or Prajapati created this universe, he just said that by following or by being part of this cosmic machine, of this yajna, but you will multiply means you will flourish. The development, individual development and collective development will occur through this process of yajna. And all the desires, all that we want can come to us can be fulfilled if we do our part in this cosmic yajna. Verse 11. Devan bhavayata nena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantaha shreyah paramavapsyatha. Cherish the devas with this, and may those devas cherish you. Thus, cherishing one another, ye shall gain the highest good. So, this word devas comes very often in these ancient texts. And one of the confusions that have occurred is the translating the word deva as God. Now, that's always a tricky thing, this translation. When you are translating from one language to another, especially going across religious and cultural boundaries, then translating becomes a difficult thing, a tricky thing as well. Because when these early Indologists and those who went to the eastern part of India or Indian subcontinent and started looking at their texts and wanted to translate these texts for the Western world, so here is this Sanskrit word deva. And it just seemed like it did pretty much seem to have the qualities, the abilities, the power which looked divine. And then it reminded these early Indologists, who primarily came from the Christian background, and was, oh, this looks pretty much like what we think about God. And so they started translating the word deva as God. The problem was, there are many devas. And so they said, oh, looks like these people have many gods. And then this kind of a futile debate was set up. These are worshippers of many gods as opposed to this one God in this thing. And that's all really, it's kind of funny in some sort of way, tragic as well, that it just this translation of Deva as God set up this debate about polytheism and monotheism and all of that. The word Deva literally would mean the shining ones. So these are evolved beings, more evolved than human beings, and they, after they die, they are assigned some different cosmic functions. That's what these books say. And philosophically, it meant that whether we look at this world as a living entity or as a material entity. And sometimes modern science can make everything lifeless in some way. Because if you just think of everything as just atoms and molecules, just dust. And it's possible to look upon everything that we see is so physical that it just seems pointless in some ways. Well, because every object, including the human body, it's just atoms and molecules come together, particles of matter come together, held together by some force, and that when that force is dissipated, these particles then go away. And that's why they say every composition presupposes that at some point it will be followed by decomposition. If composition means material particles coming together and being kept together in some way, decomposition would be the same particles then become separated. And that's what then it gets described in texts and poetry as well, that from dust we come and into dust we return, and so on. The vision of the Vedic sages was they saw everything alive, everything conscious. And so it was not just this dead material universe. And one way they expressed their experience was seeing what we get called as a presiding deity. that behind every natural phenomenon, that there is some conscious entity guiding, controlling that phenomenon. So it's possible to just say, well, water is evaporated, goes up, gets condensed, and then falls down at rain. Okay, but what these sages said was, yes, to gross eyes, that's exactly what happens. But beyond that, in a subtler way, there is this living principle. And so they had a conscious principle. In Sanskrit, they call it Adhishtatri Devata behind every natural phenomenon. So then, and of course, because Devas got translated as God, people speak about the God of rain, the God of water, the God of fire, and so on. And the idea was that if rain comes, and because the whole universe is living and conscious, these people said, there is this, it's a grace of God, that this living, conscious Devata is giving us this rain so that crops can grow, plants can grow, which gives me food. And one way of expressing their gratitude for this would be then they made this. So Indra was considered this Deva who was responsible for bringing rain. And so then they had these offerings done, Indraya Swaha, making an offering to Indra as an act of gratitude. And then they found more rain came, they did more worship. Similarly, there was a divine being associated with all the waters of the ocean. Varuna was another one Vedic deity who is in charge of all these bodies of water. Then there's Agni and so on. So what Prajapati is telling them is that all these divine forces who are bringing the things that we need, air, water, heat, and so on, that they will give you these things. You in turn make offerings to them. You do follow these different yajñas that I just enumerated. And then that's how this circle will be complete. You do the things you need to do, and they will do the things they are doing, by which you will be benefited, and then you in turn benefit the world. So that's essentially what is said here. Cherish the devas with this, and may these devas cherish you. Thus, cherishing one another, ye shall gain the highest good. 12, verse 12. Ishtan bhogan hivo deva dasyante yajña bhavitaha tairittattan apradayebhyo yo bhungte stena eva saha. The devas cherished by yajña will give you the desired for objects. So he who enjoys objects given by the devas without offering in return to them is verily a thief. It's interesting that the word thief here is used. No, most of us, we don't think ourselves as thieves unless, who is a thief? We don't say, well, if I go somebody's place and steal or bring what doesn't belong to me, and then I'm a thief. But here it's a much more kind of a subtle way the concept of thief is understood. It's not necessary that I necessarily need to go something and take away something that belongs to another. Even if I receive things from the universe and I refuse to then pass it on, then I'm a thief. And which really means, think about it this way. We have received so much love in our life, right from the time we were born, from different people at different stages of life. But if someone says, I'm going to receive all the care, all the love, all the friendship, I'm not going to give anything to anyone, then I'm a thief. Because then I'm holding what nature and others have given me. Instead of passing it on, I'm holding something, then I'm a thief. Which really gives us a pause to think about the kind of times in which we live, in the kind of a consumeristic society in which we live, that if we keep things, more things with us than we need, then we are a thief. Because there are a lot of people in many parts of the world who do not have even the things that we consider essential. And if we are now keeping more than I can consume, more than I need, then someone somewhere is being deprived of the use of that. Same thing with regard to food. We should not waste food. I mean, as sometimes some of us might remember, oftentimes, and I suppose that's probably true with all mothers everywhere, when we were little, we were often told, don't waste food. If something is in your plate, you've got to finish it. And in the beginning, it just seems like sometimes when you're very little, you're not thinking about why we are being told that way. But as we grow older, we see that there is shortage of food. There are people dying for want of food. Since March, I think, the essential food and supplies haven't even gone. For instance, just to give one example, in Gaza, and there are children dying of hunger. Now, you and I, there is nothing much, we don't have the power to change along these big international conflicts and things that are going on. And we might say, well, me saving me a little food, how is that going to affect someone in a distant part? But that's actually missing the point. That the least I can do is not waste food. And eventually, if I'm a cog on this big cosmic world machine, my doing the things that need to be done, even in a way that I may not understand or comprehend, that thing will make a difference in however little a way. And so this idea of yajna is also a call to recognize our responsibility of being a part of this human species. It's not just to receive things from everything, to kind of just think about myself or my family, but also think about this larger reality of which we are a part. And so this idea of yajna is so powerful. It's powerful because, first, as I said, it prevents us from thinking I'm the center of the universe. I'm not the center of the universe. I'm just a small little thing in this big cosmic machine. I'm some tiny little part there. So in the beginning, when we think I'm the center of the universe, that's the false I. That's the ego. That's the I connected with the body and mind, through which we make sense of the world around us. But this idea of yajna helps us to kind of break away from that idea of the self as the center of the universe. Just makes me feel I'm just one among the billions of creatures in this world. And with that, once this hold of the ego gets loosened on me, I'm able to see myself and able to see the world in a very different light. And so this idea of yajna needs a lot of reflection. Verse 13. Yajñashishta shinas santo mucchante sarvakilbishaihi bhunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatmakaranat. The good, eating the remnants of the yajna, are freed from all sins, but who cook food only for themselves, those sinful ones eat sin. So that is what I meant. That if I'm the center of the universe, I would want everything for myself and give away as little as I can. And all basic selfishness comes from this. And so what this verse points out is eating the remnant of the yajna. And today, in today's sensibilities, we might call it the prasad. And that's why, of course, during the ritualistic worship we have here, We make the offering of food, and then afterwards we all eat it as prasad. But even if we don't do a ritualistic puja every day, it's a good thing. I mean, people offer a short prayer before meals or say grace before meals. You might have heard about this little boy who was asked by a priest once, "Do you say grace before meals every day?" And the boy said, "No, it's not necessary. My mom is a good cook." So it's not just, we don't say grace just because, oh, I hope this food is good or it's delicious or it's tasty. Sometimes the grace before meals is seen as a way of expressing gratitude. That through God's grace, this food is in front of me on my table, that I may eat it and be grateful for that it is there. And it's a wonderful way to think about it. There's also another way to think about it, and that is, can I try to do everything, not for myself, but for others? Again, that's another way of making sure that I is not the center of the universe. And oftentimes, those in spiritual life, those who are seekers, those who are devotees, often say, let me do everything out of love for God. Even my love for others has to be routed through the love for God. I should love others because others are loved by God. So one thing we will see sooner or later in life, anything that we do in life, any thought that we think in life, so long as God has some role to play or is present somewhere in that way of thinking, the way of doing, generally we are safe. But if something we try to do or something we try to think and we find there is no place for the divine anywhere in that transaction, we have to be really very careful, because those are the kind of things that trap us. Those are the kind of things that bring more pain and suffering and stress and worry and anxiety. And so if we have to keep God somewhere in everything that we do, then clearly, even if we don't do a puja, a ritualistic worship every day, it's a good practice that every time I'm going to eat something, let me first offer it to God. Even if you may not chant any mantras to do that, just mentally, just make an offering to God and then eat it. And if it's done sincerely, then everything you eat, small thing or big thing, not just breakfast, lunch and dinner, but any other thing you just want to throw in your mouth, or even popcorn, just think that I'm just first offering it, and then it becomes prasad. And the belief is that if I have done a genuine offering, then whatever I'm eating receives that divine touch and is purified in some way. And then if I eat it, then it's not just food, it's a sanctified food. But just as we can make an offering of food to God and then eat it, we can make an offering of every activity that we do. In the beginning, any activity, because sometimes many of us who pray morning and evening, and that's very good. But the challenge is also, what do I do after my morning prayer ends and before my evening prayer begins? What about this interim period? And oftentimes it's a pretty long gap. And so one way we can try to maintain the continuity of my remembrance of God is, after I finish my morning prayer and meditation, when I start doing work, and by work I don't simply mean the job that you go or the workplace you go to. Every little thing, if you go and fix yourself a cup of tea or coffee, that's an activity. If you do your dishes, that's an activity. Every little thing can be an activity. Now, in the beginning, if consciously, every little thing you do, even before, say, here is your cup of tea or coffee, before putting it to your mouth, Just repeat your mantra once, or just remember God while you do it. And then when you're going next, go and wash your cup or dishes, once again remember God. When before getting into your car, repeat your mantra once. After you have reached your destination, do it once. Once this becomes a habit, in the beginning you have to do it consciously. But very quickly, we are just creatures of habit. Once this becomes a habit, you will see instinctively, you will just remember the divine. And when it all adds up. Then you will find between morning and evening, when before we rarely thought of God, we already have so many opportunities to think of the divine. If I can do that throughout the day, then the quality of my evening prayer and meditation will improve. If I go to sleep, again thinking, remembering the divine, just glide into sleep while you're repeating a mantra, for instance. So when you wake up in the morning, your morning meditation quality will improve. That's why they say, if you want to have a good meditation in the evening, you have to start preparing it for it in the morning. If you want a good meditation in the morning, you have to start preparation the previous evening. Because we are not machines. It's not like just sit and go into samadhi. Well, maybe Ramakrishna did. For us, it will take some time. So we need preparation. We need practice. Verse 14. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyadanna sambhavah yajñat bhavati parjanyo yajñav karma samudbhavah. From food comes forth beings, from rain food is produced, from yajña arises rain, and yajña is born of karma. Verse 15. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yajne pratishthitam. No karma to have risen from the Veda, and the Veda from the imperishable. Therefore, the all-pervading Veda is ever centered in Yajña. So you can see how everything that we do can be seen through this lens of Yajña. How some of these sacrifices have to be done can be found, of course, the Vedic sacrifices, you will find information in the Vedas themselves. So we learn about what we need to do, what our responsibilities are, and we follow them up, and then we become a part of this cosmic cycle. Verse 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayati hayah aghayurindriya ramo mogham partha sajivati. He who here follows not the wheel thus set revolving, living in sin and satisfied in the senses, O son of Pritha, he lives in vain. So if we don't consciously become a part of Yajña, then we are the ones who living in sin here would mean then all the pain and suffering that we have. A reason is the living according to Yajña brings harmony in life. And if I stop doing that, if I don't do my role, don't carry out my responsibilities, then as I said, in some way, if even one little part in the machine is not working well, the overall working of the machine is affected. And to the extent that gets affected, and I'm responsible for it, I'm going to suffer for it. And so we have to make the best effort to be, and not every part has the same role to play clearly. And that's why all of us, we are a part of this cosmic machine, but all of us don't necessarily have the same duties and responsibilities because we are placed, and that how and when and none of us know. Sometimes people say, well, it's because of my karma. Whatever may be the reason, each of us is called upon depending on wherever we are placed in this machine, to do our response, to carry out our duties and responsibilities well. Doing that is being part of the yajna. Not doing it is then what creates all the difficulties. So these set of verses that we saw today is all about yajna, the cosmic sacrifice. So give some thought to it. Some of it's a rather intricate language, and then some commentators give a explanation based on some ancient systems. Some give explanation based on kind of more current sensibilities. Whichever way you understand it, but it's good to keep this larger picture at the back of the mind about yajna. It's not simply those big fire and just pouring oblation and ghee into it. There is more to yajna than simply that ritualistic part of it. So we will stop here today. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, questions, yeah, Vikram.
Hari Om Swamiji. Swamiji, if we are trying to live life through karma yoga and trying to live by offering everything to God, are we naturally also living with yajna? There's no separate.
Yeah, if you are following the principles of a yoga, karma yoga or bhakti yoga, we're already a part of yajna, because those yogas are also formulated with the yajna in mind. Yes.
Swamiji, I lost my mother, and I'm trying to figure out how I can honor her with some form of thing that I do, like a yajna, so that I can honor her. How would I do that?
Yeah, good. Please. I'm sorry to hear that. One thing, of course, it's possible to do. If you would like to do that, you can have a priest come and do the ritual. There is certain pujas are done after the departure of this thing. So those are the things that people do. But even more important than that is the best way to honor those who are close to us is to see what we have learned from them and practice the things. And especially with regard to our parents, our father, our mother, when we look, most of us have memories of them. If our parents are not living anymore, we remember the kind of things we heard from our parents, or some of the elders in a family, even grandparents for that matter. And then I have to ask that the things, the wisdom I got from them, the wisdom you got from your mother, in what way are you living according to it? Are you making good use of the teaching? Because nothing will make our elders more happy than to see that the dreams they had for us, the wisdom they gave us, the teaching they gave us, that we are sincerely striving to live according to that. We may not always succeed. We may not have reached that state of perfection, but sincerity, am I sincerely striving to be the kind of person my father wanted me to be, my mother wanted me to be, my grandmother wanted me to be? I think that's, the way I see it, is that's the way to honor them. That's the best way to honor them. The best way to honor one's teacher is whatever instructions we have received from the teacher, and by that I mean a guru, a spiritual teacher, to kind of follow those instructions sincerely, day after day after day. That would be honoring the teacher. So that's why the scriptures speak about Matra Devo Bhava, Pitra Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava. Honoring them means doing the things that we learn from them. There is also Atithi Devo Bhava, and An atithi, sometimes people, of course, literally it would mean someone and suddenly drops in on the house, a guest who is you are not expecting. But atithi, in a way, would be any stranger we meet, even if you're going on a subway, going in a bus, and you meet a stranger and that person is in need of help in some way, that person is atithi. So if I'm able to be of any help or assistance to any person, one way to see is God has come in that form. And so I'm not really helping anyone, I'm just worshipping the divine in that way. And so I would think that would be a good way to honor one's own mother and father.
Swamiji, you mentioned about repeating the mantra. I do that, but I am afraid of that, am I doing mechanical way? Because when you do sometime, so how do I make that fine line? Or I should, as a beginner, always be conscious whenever I'm repeating, no matter how many times.
Yeah, it's a good point. We have to repeat the mantra consciously, but sometimes when we keep on doing some activity over and over again, it sometimes, if we are not conscious, it tends to get mechanical. So if we find that at some point our repetition of the mantra is becoming mechanical, no need to get agitated about it. As soon as we become aware of it, then become conscious and make sure that it doesn't become. So with alertness over time, this mechanically doing it will become less and less. Because we see that not just with mantra, with anything. Things that we do daily, you're brushing your teeth or taking a shower, because it's kind of easy to do, and so it just becomes mechanical. Even drinking a cup of coffee would be mechanical. So that way it's actually wasting that coffee because you're not even enjoying that coffee. So even if you want to enjoy your coffee, then don't drink it mechanically. Yeah.
Maharaj, namaskar. When I do puja or meditation, and I don't understand if I have anurag.
You have?
Anurag for God.
Okay, yeah. Love for God, yeah.
I cannot understand that. I sometimes feel that it is mechanical. I am not loving God.
Yeah. So every time you become aware that's mechanical, just pause and look at the altar. Summon up. There is love in the heart. Sometimes we may not feel it. And so it's good to kind of become aware of it and then once again resume the thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of interesting that only when we become aware of it that, it's mechanical, I'm not saying it out of love. Only those who have love will feel that way. Those who don't have love are not even going to be worried about it. And so, yeah, that's the paradox, that if we have love, even if there is sometime we don't feel it, we immediately notice that absence. But if there is no love at all, then it's always absent, so they won't notice it. So it's a good sign. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop here today. When we meet next week, we'll begin with verse 17. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.